Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for all of your service and to your family. It's tremendous. And by the way, sacrificial service. And I know that throughout that service, I'm sure you've faced people who've disagreed with your line of work, have probably even been hostile at times. I'm sorry it had to happen in this committee. And just know that, as you can tell, by and large, we're not here to question your integrity. That's already been well established by lots of people. I appreciated both in your opening statement and in your answers to questions of Senator Fisher, your commitment to the nuclear triad, the importance of that deterrence, and specifically the ground-based strategic deterrent. As you know, North Dakota is home to about 150 of the Minuteman IIIs scheduled by the Air Force to be replaced as part of the modernization effort somewhere in the 2028 to 2035 time frame as they are assumed, or an analysis determined that they'd probably be aging out the legacy missiles about that time. But there are some that want to delay that think that further study is required. One of the things I've really appreciated that you've mentioned multiple times, and that is the importance of understanding the long game, being committed to a long-term plan, commitment to the NDS. Can you speak just a little further about the importance of that, specifically that one part of the triad, the ground-based strategic deterrent, and why sticking to the time frame is important?
The time frame is important because we do need to modernize the triad. It needs to be the two parts of deterrence are having a capability and the will to use it. The capability means that the triad, at least in this case, the ground-based strategic deterrent must be reliable, must be effective. We want it to be safe as well. And it needs to build in all those other mechanisms. It needs to be cyber protected, for example. So that is a reason to modernize it. And as I said, each leg of the triad provides different capabilities. In the case of our ground-based strategic deterrents, you have much quicker means of communication. They can reach targets much more quickly. And because they're at a fixed site, they are more accurate. So all those things are arguments in favor of having a ground-based strategic deterrent option.
Thank you. Another issue that you've raised a fair bit, and we've talked about the new domain of space as well as cyber. As you know, the Defense Authorization Act that came out of this committee and then the Senate includes standing up a Space Force. The House, similarly, they call it a Space Corps. But we have had some serious consideration and discussion and some disagreement on what the leadership ought to look like for that. And I know there have been multiple options that have been presented, proposals by the administration, DOD. The one we settled on was a version of the most recent, and that is something that would be similar to the Marine relationship to the Navy. I guess I'd be interested just in your thoughts about that and what we've settled on. The leadership model is where I focused a lot of my attention, is ensuring that there's a permanent seat with the Joint Chiefs, that the responsibility of the commanders to answer directly to the Secretary of the Air Force. But some of that's been in dispute, and I'd just be interested in your observations.
Well, I obviously support the budget proposal that we put forward with regard to standing up the Space Force. At this point in time, the House has a view on that, and the Senate has a view. And I think, obviously, if confirmed, I'd want to engage the committee as you approach conference, both committees, to come up with the right solution. But I think when you step back from it, you have to ask yourself, what are we trying to do? And I think what we're trying to do is recognize that space is no longer a place from which we support combat operations or from which we look down upon the world and see what's happening. It is now a warfighting domain, not because we made it that way, but because the Russians and Chinese are making it that way. And so what you want to do as much as possible to make sure we are sufficiently robust in the space warfighting domain is to ensure you have unity of command and unity of effort, people who are focused on that as a warfighting thing going forward. The closest analogy I have to this, and I think I may have mentioned to you, is when in 1947 they pulled the Army Air Corps out of the United States Army. It freed up our aviators to think about warfighting in the air domain and how you conduct warfare unencumbered by a hierarchy, if you will, that was focused on ground combat. And so that's how I think about this problem. I think we just got to realize that it is a new domain of warfare now, and it requires a different organizational construct and a different way of thinking about it.
I think your illustration's right on point, and I appreciate, again, your service and your good answers. I yield.